What was rusty? Mm-hmm. How much ATM have you been doing between segments? Twice a week. Anyone up on twice a week? Anyone up on 4 times a week? Yeah. It's fantastic. And I don't know that it necessarily has to be that you're lying down and doing a structured ATM, but I think every day. How long do you do it for? Fantastic. Mm-hmm. 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 And what are the questions you're asking yourselves? Mm-hmm. 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 And what would you be looking for when you were doing that? Mm-hmm. So there's some big principles in there, yeah? What other things do people do when they're not necessarily just doing an ATM, but during the day? How light do I feel?
Yeah, or how heavy.
Yeah.
And if I'm heavy, what can I change to feel light?
Mm-hmm. And what sort of things have you found?
Position, how my feet land on the ground is always the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Carrying buckets of water up and down stairs is really interesting because it's also
having load.
Carrying a load.
I agree.
And it's really hard to be light when you're doing that, but it can be done.
Absolutely.
And also, how do I pick up the buckets? Is my back straining or isn't it? How do I do this so the buckets feel effortless?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other things. Yeah.
I ask myself if I am holding my breath, and when I find myself holding my breath, release, and where is the air going, which is my, if I feel breathing more in my chest or my abdomen or where.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing I was lately asking me is what I am doing with my hands. And hands are the position of my hands, if it's here or there, or if I like this. For example, now I am holding this with my hand and I'm putting a lot of effort more than necessary to keep this up.
Fantastic.
So, hands and breathing.
And when you release that effort, where do you feel the release in the effort?
Because I was talking and I was holding my breath. And when I am talking in English, normally I'm more nervous than I'm talking in my language.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that I can breathe more better. So I feel the connection of the holding and putting more effort and
the
how
breathing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're great relationships. So my next thing is, how would you expand on that even more? Do you know what I mean? How would you go, is my head free when I do this? Yeah. What's happened to my ability to shift weight?
Yeah.
What disappears from my image, so that all of you get more and more skilled at looking for relationship, looking for a bigger picture.
When you ask and that response arrives later, I feel when I hold my hand and I release my hand, I can feel that then I can release also my shoulder, this part of.
Maybe something happens in your hips as well.
It would be.
Because I think that's the thing. It's you that's holding. It's not your shoulder. It's not your hand. But how do you gradually get this image of it's all of me in that holding?
Yep.
If I think of myself as a jellyfish, then when I'm stressed, it's not just one tentacle that I'm pulling, it's like from inside. And I pull everything in a way. But the parts that get sore are the ones that, I don't know, maybe I do it more often in one area than another. Is that what you're saying? When
I think
you say it's you, it's not.
It's all of you that is doing the movement. It's not just one part of you. Your brain doesn't think in parts.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, how do we spread your attention? Because if I'm working, say, in FI, and my idea is that, oh, I'm doing something with the shoulder, and that's to do with the hand, but how I've left out the person. I've left out what could their pelvis be doing, what could their knee be doing, what could their foot be doing. So that, because the more I can inhabit all of myself, and this is what takes the practice. That's what I was talking about the other day. You're still, I'm starting to develop these relationships. I'm starting to develop my questions of what I'm looking for. And how do we keep coming back to it's you in your environment? Because the more you've got all of you in the picture, the more you can have all of them in your picture. So that it becomes a default in a way, that every time you put your hands on someone, you wouldn't think not to include all of them. Because you've honed that skill, and it doesn't happen quickly. And that's why I'm saying it takes a lot of practice. So it's the questions we ask, it's the relationships, but there's also, and I think walking's wonderful, Elizabeth, don't get me wrong, but there's something about ATM where you're in different orientations, different positions all the time, where you have to find yourself in many, many different ways. That's fundamental to the process as well. Okay, so let's look at some stuff. Can a couple of people lie on their belly? Yeah. So where's good, Jen, for the camera? Just here? So do you want to lie on this one? Are you happy to lie on your belly, Doris, or? Because
Jenny, do you want this off or just turn it upside down?
June, you can take it off. Your name tag, if you want. So we've got two people lying on their bellies. This tells me everything. Doesn't matter what position they're in. This tells me what they understand. Just as in any position. So you're still building all those observational things in. What am I looking for? And again, it's what I'm going to suggest is rather than just saying, when I look at Doris, one heel is rolled in more than the other. I'm going to move that onto, and I know we don't usually say, what's she doing that one heel is rolled in more than the other? Why does that make sense to her? So we're going to turn them a little bit more into questions. Yeah? So rather than just making the observation, but starting to turn them a little bit more into a question when you're making the observation. So you sort of start getting used to this, and you might already be doing this a lot. And when you've got two people, can you see that already makes a difference to what you're going to see in one person than the other? It was really interesting, and you two can take a rest whenever you like. This really good friend of mine, so don't feel you have to, if you're uncomfortable, you stay there. This really good friend of mine, one night before Christmas, bought around 6 tankas. No, do you all know what the tanka is? The Buddhist pictures that are always surrounded by all the embroidery, and they use them for meditating on, and they're beautiful. Anyway, it was so interesting. She's a Feldenkrais practitioner, as am I, and Graham, my partner, who really loves a lot about art. And it was fascinating what we could see, because we had 6 there to compare against each other, and the distinctions we could make and the questions that would arise compared to just looking at one. And that's the beauty of being an ATM teacher. All of a sudden, you've got all of these things, which another question is, how many of you are teaching ATM? Teaching ATM. Yeah, you're still teaching though. Yeah, great. Okay, so Elizabeth, are you happy to lie down as well? We'll just dob her in. And if you're not, feel free to say so. Elizabeth, yeah? So, Jane, can you go back on your tummy for a minute? So what are some of the questions we could ask? They're the same questions you ask in ATM. What are some of the questions that we could ask? How do they contact the ground? Okay. Yeah. So let's do that one first. Let's observe how they're contacting the ground, and what does that tell us about their organisation? So let's put another. It's fine. Mm. Mm.
I'm not sure that I can tell you. I can see the inquiry, but I don't know how to get to the next stage. Yet.
Anyone else feeling the same way? Don't know where else to go. Okay, let's try something. Could you become Elizabeth and be on the floor and do what she's doing? Because now you're going to have to start to notice some things. And if you, all of you can do it, just pick Elizabeth, Doris, or Jane and be one of them. We're going to do this in small groups, but, you know, just, this is just set it up. So what can you understand? And feel free to keep getting up, having a look. So this is comfortable for her. But it doesn't give her a cramp in her left foot. So what's different? Maybe because you were interested in contact with the ground. And can you feel your contact in your pelvis is pretty... Where's Elizabeth's contact with the ground in her pelvis? No? Where is it? Is it down on a pubic bone? Is it a little bit more toward the front of her pelvis? Where is she on her leg? Yeah? Try that, see if you can. Yeah. And her elbows are a little bit more bent and her fingers are a little flexed. So what information did that give you? What are you noticing now that you didn't notice before? Yay. Absolutely. Where's the head? Because you can look at now. So Doris, now look where the creases in her head are, and this is forward and down a little bit. Now, so where's the pressure? She's taking more weight through here. Huh? Is it more on the left? Because her head's this way, but her pelvis is this way. No, her weight isn't over here. It's over here. So how about you break into little groups of 3 and start to mimic each other? So one person lies down and the other 2... Yeah. Okay, so groups of 3. One more question. If they were going to turn their head the other way, how would they shift their weight? What are the bits that could easily respond and what are the bits that maybe wouldn't be as clear? So you have to try it on yourself first. Do you know what I mean? So have you been, Jane, have you been being Camilla? Yeah. So, and just see if you can work out from that, how would you turn your head? Yeah, if you're being Sylvie. You're following me? No? Okay, so I'll say it again. So who was being, you were being Raymond. Okay, so one of you can now be Raymond and work out what would you do if you were going to shift your head if you were Raymond. Being Raymond. Yeah, and then see what he does. Okay? Yeah. So you're going to be Elizabeth and you're going to turn your head. So would you lift your head? Would your head go down? What would you do and where would your weight shift?